I think it's everyone's birthright to feel joy. I got into like a rabbit hole of David Lynch films.
I mean, we're both video editors, but this starts to become the editing process of your life. I have too many ideas, too many interests, too many passions. I'm in a state of continual frustration because I'm giving 2% of myself to all of the things that I'm 100% interested in.
I know that feeling. When I talk about the meditation that I'm doing, it's really changed my relationship to creativity because I don't feel like I need to rely on the outside sources anymore. I really do feel like it is coming through like the deeper levels of the ocean are silent. And that's where like the catching the big fish are at the bottom of the ocean.
So by definition, if you're exceptional, you're not just a regular normal person.
But what does it mean to be exceptional? I have this mission as an artist where, as just to be clever as a projection artist, I say that I project light into the world, right? So I literally and figuratively am using my projection and immersive experiences to uplift the people that experience them and to uplift myself. So that's my driving mission, and that's what keeps me sharing.
That's all just massive creativity.
All right, here we are. It's the first episode of my brand new Massive Creativity podcast. Today, I'm joined by my first guest of the first episode. It's got to be Hollydanger. We've actually been talking about doing this for a very long time. I think back when I was doing a couple of my other old podcasts, and we were just talking before we started recording about how we're like these two people, like it's amazing that we haven't collaborated on anything all this time that we've known each other, because we're both designers, we're both animators, video artists, like editors, like similar kind of skill set. Obviously, we have completely different flares and sense of styles and directions, which sort of makes it perfect because we get along well. We're of like a very positive mindset for us to collaborate and work, and yet we've never done it. And not that this is even sort of a video art collaboration, but this is sort of our first actual collaboration of any sort after we've known each other for what, like 20 years now or something?
I think so. Yeah.
So I'm so glad we're doing this finally. Like, this is just super cool.
Me too. And I just want to say, thanks for thinking of me to be a part of the debut of this incredible podcast. I've been following you for 20 years, and in the most recent iteration, all your YouTube content, and it's been so inspiring. Even if we haven't been connected, I feel like I've been connected.
Cool. Yeah. And it's like we've been just sort of like, peeking in on each other's work. Like I've been seeing I know you had like a show a couple weeks ago, and we're just keeping an eye on each other, like, and we're like, oh, that's cool what you're up to. Like, but today this is sort of cool for us because we get to catch up just as like two friends, two video artists, but also like I think this is going to be a very meaningful and worthwhile conversation to share with a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. Because we're going to get into, what this podcast is going to be all about, but also what my YouTube channel and overall brand is all about, which is creativity and productivity, and to me, and I think you would agree, like you said earlier, like they go hand in hand. And I think a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about today, some of it will be more professional, some of it will be more personal, some of it will be more about you and me, some of it will be general concepts and principles that I think people can take away and learn a lot, So whether they're early in their careers or seasoned veterans like us, I think there's a little something for everybody here.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm excited.
So we're going to start out with this first little chapter here of what I'd like to call the leap of faith. I want to hear all the details of your story because I feel like, not that it's a race or a competition, but I feel like you're a little further down the road than me in this sense of sort of like breaking out of the corporate sort of 9-to-5. And I've seen some of your content, and you've very much pronounced, it's like a very deliberate thing that you're like, you know what, everybody, I'm leaving this, I'm going to this, like my life is becoming more like this and less like this. For me, it's been on the same general path, but more subtle. Like I'm just kind of taking a little bit less client work and trying to work on more of my stuff. And it's a gradation of a process. And it might be the case for you, but maybe this is just publicly how you're putting it forth. And maybe that's deliberate. I don't know. But all of this is in my head, but I want to hear from you. Like, walk us through the whole thing. I know you were working you had a full-time job working as a motion graphic artist, like in Stamford, Connecticut, right? At a company you worked for a long time, right?
Yes.
So,
and by the way, Oh, sorry, go ahead.
So let's start there, sort of to walk us through the journey of how you got from there to wherever you're at today.
Sure. That's a great question. And I also love hearing the perception of because here we are, two friends who've known each other for 20 years, and you've only really experienced what I'm putting out online. So it's so fascinating to hear your perception of the brand and like the art and what I'm putting out there in the world, because it's similar, but I'm really excited to kind of get into the story of it. You're not too far behind me or whatever. There's no time, right? I am still swinging the pendulum between commercial, corporate, and the art world. So I essentially have two businesses under the same name of Danger. So my name is Hollydanger, and I've really adapted that name into my business moving forward into these two different directions. And so, gosh, where did I start? 20 years ago, I got my start working in advertising off of a graphic design fine art degree. And so I started my motion graphic and editing career working at an agency that was doing TV and radio commercials. And I pretty much stuck at that job for about 6 years and wasn't paying a whole lot of money, but it was like a really great group of people. Like I was really connected to the people I worked with. Like it was just such a small knit agent locally here in Stamford. And so that's where I got my feet wet. I learned motion graphics on the job. Like I actually did not go to school for it. What about you? Did you?
Similar. Yeah, similar. Like at least you studied graphic design in college. I actually studied industrial engineering
at
Northwestern.
Interesting.
So
wow, I didn't know that.
I'm completely self-taught, basically, like just web design, Photoshop, After Effects. I just learned it on my own. I have no degree in any of it.
Okay, so that totally blows my mind because your skill level is just like off the charts, like really. So I went to school for graphic design. I did take one class it wasn't even in After Effects. It was to go through all the different motion platforms that were out there. Like After Effects was one of the many things we learned. I don't know if you remember, like Director, which was like if
Macromedia.
you were making you're right.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
All right, so that was like DVD landing page, like the menus for DVDs where you'd click into it and go into bonus content, right? So I learned how to do that. And then there was Flash for like web banners and all that kind of stuff. So I took one class that every week they would just teach us a little bit of each one of those things. And I just remember from that moment on, I fell in love with motion. And because one of our assignments was to, create a motion graphic piece and put it to a time, on music. And I remember taking like a Moby piece and animating. I don't even remember what the graphics were at this point. I'd have to really look back. But I just remember like, oh, this is like really sparking my interest and my attention. And so when I got out of college, I graduated from SUNY Purchase in Westchester, New York. I pursued the job in advertising because that was the closest thing I could find that was utilizing like my graphic design skills, but had kind of like a wider role available to get into like a little bit of filmmaking, a little bit of video editing, because they were doing focus group content for their television commercials and things like that. So I would be filming their focus groups and editing them for the clients, and then I'd also be around if they banners and things that they needed. Like one of their biggest clients was Slim Jim, if you remember, like Snap into a Slim Jim.
Step into a Slim Jim.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Was it like Randy
Randy
wrestler?
Savage?
Randy Savage, is that what it was?
Randy Savage. Yeah, exactly. So that was like one of the clients that we worked on, and so I really got my feet wet into like just advertising and motion graphics for some of those like bigger brands, and it was really great until I wanted more. And until I realized like my bank account was kind of in the red, as like a 20 something year old. And I just like had bigger dreams. And I had always been doing artwork, but on the side, just like for myself, not showing anybody what that looked like.
Same here. Yeah.
And even so, while I was working at that day job, I started doing freelance projects because people would ask me like, hey, I want to make, like a video slideshow for this event that's happening. Or I was doing some like online promotional, like promo videos for different brands and stuff like that. Just like I started meeting people that needed this. And so I started really kind of going down that road of like being a freelancer while having a day job. So this is how I knew I could do it.
Okay. I did that for a little while as well. And it was good money, but you can't do it forever. Like, especially as you get older, it just sucks the life out of you. Like it just drained, at least for me, it drained me. Just
100%.
the sheer hours of like work. It's like, I could do it, and I did it for a few years, but it's like it's not sustainable for the rest of my life for sure. But is that how you felt about it as well? Like,
absolutely.
For a period of time, it was good, but
the moonlighting, yeah. So it was like, yeah, and what's crazy is that working in that advertising job, it would trickle over till late nights, weekend pitches. Like it was a lot of time, and it wasn't a lot of money. So I got to the point after about 6 years where a friend of mine called me up at a corporate job for corporate video editing and production, and said, "Hey, like if you come over to the dark side, we will double your salary, and you'll only have to work 9 to 5." So that was really appealing.
I mean, how do you argue with that? It's like, come on.
Yeah. And I could have at that point said, you know what, let me start looking for something that feels more aligned and that pays me more. Like I could have gone down the road of like starting to look for myself, but this was ultimately being handed to me by a good friend of mine. Yeah. And it sounded too good to be true, but I was like, okay, let's take the leap. Let's double my salary and let's work 9 to 5. Like that. Yeah. I could do that. Because then I wouldn't have to do the freelance. Point,
that's not even a leap of faith. That's just like a no-brainer.
True,
really,
true.
It's like, I bet it was tough for you to leave that company emotionally, right? Because you had bonds and connections with the people you work with, and
I loved the people that I work with, and they're the reason that my name is Hollydanger. Actually, the people, the creative directors that I worked with at the ad agency. We were working on site one day. We were doing an Icebreakers gum commercial in California. Do you remember Icebreakers?
Yeah,
by Hershey's. Yeah. I don't even know if it's around anymore.
I remember the gum. I don't remember the commercials though, so I don't remember what their angle was.
Hillary Duff was in them.
Okay.
It's okay that you don't remember. It was a really long time ago. So I was filming behind the scenes for this commercial, and on site, I think I was like offering to pay for drinks one night, and I was like, use my credit card. And on my credit card, it says Holly D. Anger. So that's my full name is Holly Diane Anger.
Yeah,
or Anger, depending
I've
on...
actually always wondered, because I knew your middle name was D, but I didn't know. So Diane. Okay, now I know.
Yeah. But it's funny, growing up, my mom would call my last name Anger, and my dad would call it Anger. So to this day, I'm like, I don't even know which direction it goes in.
Wow. And, that sounds like my family, because like my old last name...
Yes, I remember it.
A lot of my audience might not know that, but I changed my name. Like I legally changed my name. But my old last name, which we're not going to get into that whole story now, but my parents both pronounced it differently. And it's the same thing. Like you said, it's like, I never got a clear answer of even how to pronounce my own name, which is very like disturbing to not even get a solid sense of who you are as an individual. Like, I don't even know my own name
and maybe that's why you and I both reinvented ourselves.
Partially. Oh, yeah. But also your last name didn't end in poo. So that in itself, speaking of no-brainers, was to change my name.
But my last name is Anger, so it's like anytime I go out anywhere, people are like, "Holly, are you angry?"
Really? Wow, that's lame.
But so here I was on site with these two incredibly talented creative directors, and I handed my credit card, to like, here, pay for the drinks, and it says Holly D. Anger on it. And they looked at it and they said, you should go by the name Holly Danger, because that's ultimately what it says on your credit card, right? Right? So it's like, you should go by Holly Danger. And it's like you're a superhero for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And so from that moment on, from that experience, I adopted that last name, and I haven't officially changed it because I don't need to, but that is my business name, my brand name. And I built everything from that place.
Yeah. I'm almost surprised that never occurred to you before, because it was sitting there right in front of you.
I know. It just wasn't time.
Yeah. Sometimes it's like the simplest little realizations or ideas that it's like, you stumble upon it or somebody just points you to it and you're like, why didn't I see that before? But once you see it, it's like, oh yes, this is the way forward.
I wasn't even looking for it, but it's interesting because it was empowering me, because now all of a sudden I had a platform to build my future business on by having a brand, having a brand before everybody's saying like, reinvent yourself into a brand. Right.
Yeah.
I did that when I was 20.
Yeah, no, it's good that you discovered that relatively early on, because I wasted a lot of time. I hate to call it a waste, but it took a lot of time for me because I had introversion. I had introversion.com, and I didn't like my last name, and nobody knew my last name. So I just went by my initials, and I had like Made by PK, and I was the guy from Introversion. And then I retired the Introversion project, and then I became like Slackluster for a little bit. And then I so I went through all these different names, and then I tried to create a company, I guess around 2014, and it would be sort of my Danger equivalent.
Sure.
And I spent like a year brainstorming that. And I
Wow.
came up with Plux, and I liked Plux, like Plux. And then shortly after that, in the next year, I changed my own name, and I realized I don't even need this Plux other name. I'll just go by my name like from now on. And it's a unique name. I made it up for myself, and it's like,
I love it.
so you got there quicker than I did. So I'm envious of you, but eventually
had some help.
I got there though. Now I'm very happy with where I'm at now.
And you know
with it.
what, though? I mean, we're always evolving, right? I mean, who knows where we'll be in a year from now, And I feel like sometimes you just have to try on the hat and see if it fits,
Yeah,
right?
for sure. Yeah.
Let's see, where we were in that story, though, was that I had developed that name shortly before I left the advertising job to go into corporate. And it was really empowering for me to go into corporate already with the identity in mind that I was Holly Danger, because adopting this new identity as somebody who was going into corporate video production, I really was like, wow, this is kind of like my version of Superman and Clark Kent. So I get to be like Hollyanger during the day while I'm at this corporate job. And then by night, I'm Holly Danger, who runs her own studio and does freelance work and does artwork. But I was leading two different lives.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. Like, I have a good friend, and I don't know if I'll have him on this podcast, but I've had him on a previous podcast. He changed his middle name to Danger.
I've watched some of those podcasts.
So you know who I'm talking about. So my friend, and he's an accountant. So it's a very corporate kind of day job.
I love it.
And he went by Thomas Kim as his day job, but then he was Tommy Danger for all his other like stand-up comedy and other stuff he did on the side. So it's like similar kind of dual life thing. Yeah.
But it's interesting to live that life because you feel very separate. And I'm still working on finding my way to just make it Holly Danger, as
really?
the way. Yeah, yeah.
So it still feels that separate to you.
Only because I'm still doing the corporate work.
Okay. What's your ratio? Like how much?
Yeah, it's interesting.
Of your own stuff versus the corporate.
The pendulum is swinging. It really is. It's swinging towards the art side right now. But what's amazing is that the corporate job that I had, I thought I would only be there for 1 year. I stayed for 12 years. While I was nurturing Holly Danger underneath it all.
Right.
And it was like the best and worst thing to ever happen to me, having that corporate job, because the relationships that I made and the experience that I gained at that place is like directly related to the success of my business now. The people and relationships that I met there are continuing to hire me now. So I've continued some of those commercial and corporate projects, but doing them on my own time a couple of times a year. So as of right now, I do 3 like gigantic corporate projects per year, and give or take a couple littler ones. And then the rest of the time I work on art. So I would say it's almost like 70% art right now and 30% corporate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I think the dream is to really just like swing it all into the other side. However, I come with so much experience on the commercial corporate side that there is a part of me that really likes it too. Because I feel like I know it. I'm good at it. It's not about my self-expression. It's about helping somebody else bring a communication to life.
Yeah. It's also I look at it like I started to become a little burnt out, I guess sometime around when I turned 30. And I sort of embraced the sort of Han Solo mercenary kind of, mentality of,
look, I ain't in this for your revolution, and I'm not in it for you, princess.
My heart's not in it, because I think I had my heart broken too much. You work on a project for like weeks or months, and you're vested in it. And then the client's like, or for whatever reason, they're like, oh, we're killing the project, or we're changing everything to blue now, and we have to redo, and that whole part you worked on, we're cutting that part. And I had been through that enough times where it was like, for my own mental health, like I just had to stop caring as much about the work. And it sounds weird to say that out loud. This is the kind of thing that you only say on a podcast like 20 minutes in, because like not everybody's going to hear this kind of thing. But like, it's really true. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who can relate to it, who work in the industry where, whether it's design or advertising or video or whatever, I started to reach a better balance. It's not that I'm going to put out like shitty work for clients, because I still want the client to be happy and to be doing well at my job. But I look at it more, and this is a little bit more like my engineering degree and my background. It's like I look at it as problem solving, and I think this is
100%.
where a lot of like creative artsy people and I think this is why I fared better early on in my career, even though I didn't have any graphic design degree or anything like that. Like I have a good eye, I have a good sense of aesthetics and timing and all that stuff, musicality, but I would go into any project like, okay, what are the parameters? Like, what does the client want? What does the creative director want? Sometimes those aren't the same thing. And I have to sit here and weigh it all and solve the problem. Whereas I think a lot of just artsy designer people, they just want to make something beautiful and pretty, but that doesn't necessarily solve the problem, you know? So, but fast forwarding back to sort of my, ever since then, I think I've become much more comfortable with doing client work and stuff, whether it's corporate or whether I care about it or not, because it's just like doing worksheets. Like I liked math as a kid, but it was like, you just get into a rhythm and then it was like, cool, it feels good to fill out the worksheets. Do it.
Yes.
Cool. All right. Client's happy. I get my paycheck. Cool. You know, so perhaps you can relate to that. Like you kind of get into a rhythm and you realize it's just creative problem solving. That's all it is to be a designer, like for corporate work for clients.
Yeah, I feel like I'm kind of going through the maze and solving the puzzle. And I think that there's something really liberating about, having somebody rely on you for that expertise. And I love the journey of going alongside that client and figuring it out together. I think very early on, like in that advertising job that I had, I ran up against what you were describing, where I would work on a pitch till like 2 a.m, like a pitch deck or something like that. And in the morning, it's like, oh, that meeting's not happening. And that happened so often that I just got so burnt on that. And that's what made me want to leave and go to try out the corporate job, which I started out as a video editor, like talking head videos, like probably the most boring thing you can possibly do. But what I brought into that was like my love of motion graphics, and they didn't even have like a motion graphics team or anything like that at the time. And so I brought a new element into the equation, and I got to build a motion graphics department because of what I was bringing to the table. So talking about like solving a problem, like they didn't even know they needed that at the time.
Yeah, right. That's a great little, I don't know that you're not really interviewing for jobs anymore, but that's a great little interviewing story to share, like how you created this motion graphic department out of thin air sort of thing.
Yeah, and it's a huge department now, and I'm not a part of it anymore, because I've gone past that into, something that really tugs at my heart a little bit more.
You've gone rogue.
I've got 100%. I've got
Yeah, right. Exactly. Okay. So let's speed along here. So I kind of get a sense now of your balance. Are there any key details you want to share within there, or are we pretty much caught up with like sort of the journey and where you're at today, like in terms of the balance and like?
I mean, so where I stopped in that story was having a corporate job for 12 years in video production, and one of the things that is interesting that's kind of a crossover to what I'm doing now is that video production that I was doing was for stage graphics, so it was actually with a company where they would have somebody get up on stage in front of like an 8,000, pixel across, like 50-foot, 80-foot screen. And so I was starting to develop graphics and videos for these really unusual events, and really thinking more about the experience that people were having, versus it just being like an infographic informational video. Right. And so that, like, I'd be going on site and working with the production teams on filling out that, that experience. And that directly led to me saying, you know what, I want to create experiences that I want to create, right? Not just do it for somebody else, but it's like, what would a Holly Danger experience look like? And now I know how to do it because I've worked with the CEO of these huge companies and these very corporate level C-suite people. That gave me the expertise on, managing my time, productivity, how to find balance. And I learned all of that from that corporate job that I get to now put into my own work. So I think that where the story continues is finding the balance once you've decided to go off on your own and become this like a solo entrepreneur, which is where I am right now.
Yeah. I didn't know that about that job. It sounds like the perfect prep for what you're doing now, because everything I see you do now is like in a physical space, and that job prepped you for that. So that's great I didn't know that.
Yeah. And like I said, that was a direct result of me bringing motion graphics to this team, whereas I was hired as a video editor who was using an Avid system, which is also for me, it was like not, it was not something I knew how to do.
So this was that same corporate job for 12 years
12
that
years.
you-
Like I said, I went into it thinking I would just stay for one, and I gave myself parameters. I said, I'm going to buy my first laptop, I'm going to buy my first video camera, and I'm going to pay off my college student debt. That was my 3 goals. And I said, I'm going to leave when I do that. And I
Okay.
did all 3 of those things in the first year.
Wow.
And then we just got wrapped up in the golden handcuffs, the stability of having a job. My dad got really sick. And so I was like, I really need financial stability. And I need that job and health insurance and 401k and like all those things that make those choices for you,
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. That
And so
sounds
that
like, that sounds like a natural progression from that overworking at a job where you love the vibe and the people, but it's burning you out.
Yeah.
To just, you know what, I need something just more stable. I can get a better balance in my life, not burning out, better money. And then you learn so much on that job. I mean, you learn on the first job as well, but also what you learned in the second job really prepared you for what you're doing now, like in physical spaces. So that's a lovely arc. It makes complete sense now that I've heard you explain it, because I've only gotten bits and pieces from your little Instagram stories here and there, but this is like the full story. So this is cool.
This is the first time I'm sharing it. So I'm like really ecstatic to share it with you on this podcast. I feel, and I know we'll get into talking about other things like social media and self-promotion and things like that, but I feel like it's very easy to hide and not share these things.
Yeah.
I feel like keeping it, like I grew up being a very, like a private person where you don't share all of these things. And over the arc of both of our careers, right over the last 20 years, like the industry has changed so much.
Yeah.
To where there was a point in time where there was no social media, right? There was no avenue to share these things. And now there is, and I'm having to learn, to be visible and to speak my truth and to share the story, because it really does help connect us together,
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I mean, there's so much to this, there's the entrepreneurial side, there's the animation design skill set. And as you branch out on your own, you have to, I said entrepreneurial side, but there's also just like a lot of, you have to figure out unless you hire somebody to do it all for you, you end up doing the, the taxes, the accounting, your scheduling,
the janitor.
Yeah, the janitor. Like, right. I do my own laundry and all this stuff here in my place. So you wear a lot of hats. There's a lot of responsibilities, and you sort of begrudgingly take it on because there's a part of you, it just justifies it in your mind. Like it's worth it. Because otherwise, and maybe this is me preaching. I'll do my little spiel and you tell me if you agree with this or not. But for you,
interesting. Okay.
But it's like, as I get older, I'm a little older than you, but like, and as I get older, I just start to realize like life is short. And yes, I could keep doing the same thing I've been doing over and over until I retire. But I'm like, I'm not the kind of person that just sits, I look at, it's a generational thing too. I look at my parents' generation stuff, and it's like, so many people are just miserable. They just retire from that generation, I think, because they have no passion. They have no joy in life. Their purpose was just to go to their job and earn money for their kids, for their family or whatever. And that's it, Yeah. I think that's changing a lot now. I think fewer people are getting married and having kids and all this stuff, but also just culturally it's different. There's good and bad. There's pros and cons to all of this. But like, for me, I'm just like, I am so passionate about sort of what we do. Like I've grown, and maybe we'll get into this in sort of the bonus portion of the episode at the end, but like, I might talk about how I've gotten jaded in the last few years, and like we might share about our 2020 experiences and whatnot, but it was like very dark times. And I'm just like, I've come out of it. But like, I feel like I've lost a lot of joy, a lot of people in my life, relationships and stuff, but like, there's still consistent things. There's just things that consistently bring me satisfaction, maybe. And sometimes that satisfaction graduates into joy, and it can be the little things, it can be like something that makes me laugh, some stand-up comedy, or like a funny movie, or like lately I've really been into, because I watch a lot of YouTube. We'll get into this later, but like I just watch a lot of YouTube. That's it. I don't even use social media anymore. I just watch YouTube.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Barely at all. And we'll get into that in a little bit. But like, I just want to say my latest trend on YouTube is like, there's a bunch of these YouTubers out there that they make these cinematic, like short films. And it's like, they talk about the process. They talk about their lenses, or sometimes it's like it's sort of, you watch the art, but then there's an art in the craft itself, So it's like, the finished product, the film, but sometimes like I didn't even care to watch the finished film. I enjoyed watching this artistic presentation of how you made the film. You know what I mean?
This is a great avenue to go down because I subscribe to this method.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So maybe we'll circle back to this in a little bit, but like my point is like, that's just what I'm into now. But what I'm saying is like, there's a lot of things in life that might seem like just little things, but for somebody like me, they bring me a lot of joy. And I'm going to keep doing this sort of thing. And I'm so into art and design and video and animation and storytelling and filmmaking and music and till the day I die. Like if I'm
Same.
80 or 90 or 70, whatever, to me, like retirement is not a concept. Like if you're just
Agreed.
going to talk about finances, then yeah, I'd like to be financially comfortable, like sooner rather than later.
Same.
And pretty much just coast doing what I love to do. And there's a lot of people in their 30s and 40s doing that now too. And part of it has to do with, yeah, me too. We're both working on it. But part of it also has to do with priorities and like lifestyle choices. And if you get joy from the little things, you don't need to have a yacht, you know, you don't need to have like 4 homes and 3 cars. And, you know, it's, you know, like, so
those are all just material things anyway, right?
Yeah. So it's up to each individual to have their own personal recipe for happiness and joy. But all that being said, my little rant, unless there's something you want to add, anything specifically is already said.
There is. Like what came up for me just listening to you talk about that is that I think it's everyone's birthright to feel joy. And I really found joy. And we can talk about like the pandemic life and all that stuff. But like for me, one thing that was born out of the pandemic, I didn't have any work coming in. It was like the first full year of myself working as a full-time solo entrepreneur.
Yeah.
It was like horrible timing.
I remember seeing that for you. Yeah.
And I was spending a lot of time on YouTube and looking for inspiration because I was feeling super low and full of anxiety. And I got into like a rabbit hole of David Lynch films and like
David Lynch
on YouTube, right? And so something I had never heard him talk about before, I don't know, maybe I just wasn't open to it, but he started talking about his experience with transcendental meditation. And he says that a lot of his creativity like comes from that, like catching the big fish, as in going into yourself, going inwards into meditation, you're able to kind of like find at the bottom of your kind of like your soul, like the stillness where all the big fish are. And you're able to kind of like pull out the grand ideas that are just like waiting to come out of you, but you can't hear them if you're just in the interference of everyday life and noise and static. And when I heard him say this, I'm like, what is he talking about? Like, I've never heard of this before. I've like tried meditation here and there, but like I'm the type of person who worked 80-hour work weeks, never had time off, never, you know, like I grew up with 2 parents that like really valued, you know, productivity, like nonstop productivity was like love, you know, and for me, I'm always like trying to achieve something. This is the first time I ever heard anybody was like, nope, joy comes from within and everybody has access to it, but we were never taught how to access it. And so that sparked me during a very dark time during the pandemic. And so I reached out and I learned from a teacher how to do it. I was like, I need to try some of this like special sauce that David Lynch has. Like, what is this? And as I went down that rabbit hole, just from like the first time I ever tried meditation, like I felt this like joy and bliss that I feel like I've never felt in my life.
Wow.
And it was like something really huge had opened for me. Like joy was like totally possible for everything. Like I don't need like sure, the yachts and stuff. That sounds great. I would definitely love to achieve financial success to where I could buy whatever I want or travel wherever I want to. But there's nothing that compares to like this like inward peace and happiness that I never had before. So I just wanted to like sidebar. I know it's kind of a long sidebar, but sidebar on that because it's just something I never knew was possible until I was like really open to it.
No, that's beautiful. It makes me want to go. Are you talking about like stuff David Lynch was just putting out, like new content, like just on his YouTube or something, like in 2020? Is that?
I watch a lot of creativity conversations, you know, just like hearing from people, where does your creativity come from? How do you battle the negative thoughts in your head? You know, all those kind of things. And so I saw a conversation between him and an author who was writing a book on creativity. And she was interviewing him. And she specifically had a part of her book where she said, you know, I hear that meditation is part of your creative practice. Can you tell us about that? And I was like, okay, what is this? I never connected meditation and creativity before, right? You think that meditation is just like like a monk that sits on a mountain that's like in silent retreats, but like never a part of your like business life. But if I tell you anything about my personal business, the one thing that has helped me grow the most is having a meditation practice.
Wow.
100%.
That's quite a emphatic statement to make there.
I'm going to dedicate all of my artwork to this from now on because I
Wow.
feel so strongly about what it has done for my life. Because like I said, I was the type of person who never stopped, who had that 80-hour grind,
Yeah.
you know, doing the double dip, right? The day job and then the freelance work. And it just left me really unhappy, you know? And this other path has just shown me balance that I never knew existed. And it's just the simplest thing you could absolutely imagine doing. And it's just allowing yourself the time to do it.
Okay. So that was a little sidebar, but
Sorry, big sidebar.
I think it's actually turned into something we should kind of dive a little deeper into, though, because one of the things I did want to talk to you later on, but maybe we'll just jump into it now, is talking about creativity and inspiration. Since we're already there, we're already talking about it. So this was mind-blowingly eye-opening to you to like hear this about transcendental meditation to sort of unlock the creativity within. But let me ask you, and you could expound further on that about how that's affecting your creative energy, I guess you could say, moving forward, but also sort of, it seems like there was like a before and an after for you at this point. Like, so what was your creativity like before this in terms of like what fuels you creatively? And I'd ask the same question for you now. Like, what fuels you creatively? Like, cause I'll just throw in a clip for myself. Like, I do just come up with, I describe myself all the time as like, I'm an idea person.
Me too.
So I have documents and notes full of like, not just an idea list. I have t-shirt ideas. I have film ideas. I have album title ideas, like lyrics ideas, you know, stand-up comedy ideas, scene ideas, cartoon ideas. So I have to organize all my ideas. It's just like a nonstop generation.
You and I are very similar.
So the sad part of my life is as I get older, like I was saying earlier, like I'm not going to be able to pursue probably 80% of these ideas. Like I just jot them down for later, and later will never come. So I have to start being really selective about which ideas am I actually going to pursue. And then it means I have to select the best ideas. But then this turns into a whole nother beast. It's not about creativity anymore. It's really more a form of productivity, but it's really about, I mean, we're both video editors, but this starts to become the editing process of your life, you know, which
mark that down.
Yeah. I mean, like, and I read this book. My sister pointed me to this several years ago. It's called Essentialism. Have you heard of this book?
No, but I'm writing it down.
Yeah. And I'll include it in the show notes for people who are interested in it. But like, it, again, sometimes it's a simple premise. Like you heard David Lynch talking about that. But like, at the same time, it's like, if it just gets enough beats in your head at the right time, it's like it'll really sink in. And the essentialism idea is really what helped me a little bit. And I'm still not awesome at this, but it's like I at least realized the problem and I need to get better at that, which is I have too many ideas, too many interests, too many passions, and I'm in a state of continual frustration because I'm giving 2% of myself to all of the things that I'm 100% interested in.
I know that feeling.
And that is, let me tell you, that is guaranteed failure on every front. And I've started to realize this in the last couple of years. And friends have told me this for a while. They're like, dude, you're into too many things. Like pick one and go with that, you know? And I'm like, yeah, I know. But I love this and I love that and I love this. You know, I am getting better at it. I'm much better. I mean, I'm focusing on this brand, like my Kaslo brand, the Massive Creativity podcast, the YouTube channel. Like this is my main focus now. And it's great. But the thing is, even within this, there are multiple passions and interests. Like I go down AI rabbit holes for days and weeks. Now I'm into this whole like cinema thing on YouTube where I'm like so interested in lenses and like filters and like lighting and, so you start to realize, how could I have been successful at this when there's already a million things within this, when I'm also trying to do my other podcast and my other thing and my soccer brand and this and that. So yeah, all that being said, the creativity is not a problem for me. Like maybe I'm already doing that. Like I wholeheartedly agree that you have to quiet the noise. And for me, that's been a lot of silencing social media, turning off notifications, muting my phone. So without meditation, like without actually meditating, there is a quietness to my life where I do spend a lot of time alone in my head, which can be good or bad, depending on the person or the mood or whatever. But I do have a lot of ideas coming forth. and a lot of good ideas. I just don't have time to get to them all. But I just wanted to say real quick, like I said that before, but it was, I went off really long there. But I have a lot of idea generation inside of me. But the way I look at it, my philosophy, and I want to get a tattoo of this actually. I want to get an I and an O on my leg, but which is also my soccer number 10, like a 1 and a 0.
Oh, cool. Love the double meaning.
Yeah. And for me, my life, I don't know, in a lot of ways, it's kind of for everybody, but especially for me. I look at life, it's a bit of a yin yang, but like I look at life as input and output. And when we're talking about creativity, for me, it's all about input and output. Because basically, if I spend too much time making stuff, like I'm just alone in my head, like animating or designing or making some art or whatever, I'll feel it's too much. Like I feel burnt out. Like I just feel exhausted after a while because I'm just like nothing but output. But that's when I need to stop. And you can call it recharge your batteries, but it's not just a physical rest thing. For me, it is actually, I need to get more input that inspires my creativity. So that's why I'm so into movies. I'm so into like,
so you mean
art.
like outward input,
Yes.
like inspiration from the outside. So that's where,
Exactly.
Okay. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but like I did want to say that that's where meditation for me has made the difference, because I'm also that person that you're describing, the person who is consuming. But what if the creativity just came from the inside out and you weren't relying on the outside consumption? Like what is deep inside of you, like on a like when I talk about the meditation that I'm doing, it's interesting because I've tried like sitting for 5 minutes, back in the day when I was at the corporate job, I was like, 5 minutes, like this is stupid, And then with the transcendental stuff, it's crazy because they like ask you to sit for 20 minutes first thing in the morning and 20 minutes again at like 6 p.m. So anchoring the day, first thing and last thing. And it's really changed my relationship to creativity because I don't feel like I need to rely on the outside sources anymore. I really do feel like it is coming through like the deeper levels. Like if you're like talking about like the ocean, right? Deeper levels of the ocean are silent. And that's where like the catching the big fish are at the bottom of the ocean, So I'm like you and I have a million ideas on the top of the ocean and I have 1,000 like sticky notes all over my studio and 50 notebooks. Like I can't fill enough notebooks, but the real silent, like the super silence, you learn what the big fish are that are down below that like you really want to bring up to the surface.
Yeah, no, it's definitely given me a lot of food for thought. And I think maybe you and I will talk more about this offline, like to continue this conversation. Cause like,
for sure.
Cause you get what I'm saying though, right? Cause like for me, it's like, I get like, I'll watch it. Like this is totally silly, like brain fodder, like, but I've been totally into like Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Do you know this comedy show?
I know of it. I never watched it.
Yeah. It's a silly show. And I just been watching it like when I have lunch, right? And I'm like, it just puts me in a good mood. But then I also see like, I don't know if you do this either, probably not, but like I'm like a time code whore. So
what do you mean by that?
When I watch shows, there's a funny line or a funny moment, I pause it, I jot down the time code in my document on my Apple Notes, and I have huge lists of all these time codes.
Wow.
And later, like, cause I have all the footage, like I download a lot of these shows. So I can make little clips and I have them accessible.
Smart.
So I throw them into my podcast and my little compilations and whatever. And sometimes it's not an actual quote, but it's like it triggers an idea. Like I'll come up with a stand-up comedy idea for it or something else. So, but that's sort of what I mean by input, in the sense that I'm always inspired by what other people are doing. So whether it's like David Lynch, for example, like there's a couple of YouTubers, like there's this one YouTuber, I just discovered her a few weeks ago. Her name, she goes by Shoe on Head. Have you heard of her? So I had never heard of her. She's got like 2 million subscribers on YouTube. I had never heard of her. But then the algorithm just shows her to me. I watch one video and I'm like, this chick is hilarious. Like she just was like cracking me up. I'm like, she's like, I don't agree with all of her politics or whatever, but she talks about culture and society and all this stuff. But I'm like, I love her humor and her energy. And she's just so funny. And I'm like, now I'm like, I want to create a playlist or like save a few videos. So before I record my tutorial videos, like for this channel, I want to absorb that energy. I want to watch like a couple of her videos or a more cinematic guy. Because it's just, I absorb that energy. It's like osmosis, It's just like I surround myself with inspiration. I get it. So then I can kind of channel it through myself and release it in my own unique way, my own flavor, but it's inspired by other people. So for me, this is like the circle of life. This is the circle of creativity. It's like I'm outputting, but I'm constantly getting input from other sources. And there has to be a balance, because if I just sit there on the couch and watch movies all day.
Exactly.
It's like you just eat all this food and you never use the bathroom, it's like, it's not healthy. You have to take it in, but you have to expel, so it's like,
absolutely.
For me, it's like the creative input, but then the creative output. And it's like, that's the balance for me.
I have a word for that, because I've been that's part of my mantra too. I call it energy for energy, right? Because we are essentially transmitting energy to each other and feeding off of it. And it goes both ways, right? So I've kind of been following. So your input output is my energy for energy.
Cool. Yeah. Very similar. Okay. So I've done my little spiel on creativity. For me, input, output, that's a big part of it. But like, so now take us through, I think I kind of set you up for like before your transcendental meditation epiphany.
Oh yeah. Going back.
So what has been your creativity sort of like source, or how does it work for you? That's a better way of putting it. How does creativity work for you before in your life and now after?
Well, it's interesting, because when I had that corporate job, I did not have time for creativity outside of my day job. And the day job itself, I was the creative director. I became the creative director of the motion graphic department that I was working in. And so there was creativity in everything that I was doing, but it was under like the corporate branding. It's like definitely within my limits of what I could do. And it was so much work.
Stick to the style guide and brand guidelines.
Totally. And so it was very, very strict, very blue, or very exactly what you would imagine. And like I said, there were some creative moments throughout my career there, but not enough. And so I had this pull inside of me the whole time that was like craving more. And so at a certain point, I think like a few years into that corporate job, I started looking for studio space because I really wanted to cultivate my creativity and actually have a physical space to go to. Again, like after work hours and on weekends, spare time. And so I found the studio that I'm recording this podcast in with you, like found this wonderful space in an industrial park locally to say, you know what, I'm going to dedicate this space to my artwork and I'm going to start working on it. And so all throughout my time at the corporate job, I was developing a video art career. So pretty much taking the skills that I had to use on my like daily basis of creating like talking head videos and motion graphics, but finding another outlet for them. I had gone to the MoMA and had seen an artist named Pipolati Wrist. I don't know. Have you heard of Pipolati?
No.
It's really unusual. It's kind of one of the video art pioneers, creating an immersive like experience. And it was the first time I'd ever seen anything like this at the MoMA. This is like back in 2009. So going way, 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 way back. And so I remember during that corporate job, driving down, seeing an exhibit like that and really making the connection between like, wow, like she's using video in this really unique way. And there's all these people like laying back and enjoying it. And like, I have those skills. I make videos, I make graphics. Like it just like opened up this portal of like what was possible with what I was already doing. So from then on, there out, like I used my studio in the after hours to develop. It started as like video art for music, like VJing. So like live mixing for DJs and bands and stuff like that. So I would do that in my like late night hours. But again, like always kind of keeping it on the side, like this is not a real thing. And also I was only coming at it with like, 5% energy at the end of the day. Like I really didn't have, I didn't have a lot of creativity left for myself, honestly.
Right.
I got my studio here that's called the Danger Gallery in 2016. And so I had been working at my day job for, I think, a few years prior to developing this space here. But it has been essential to really like dedicating myself to the craft and like video art and like saying that I'm going to be an artist.
Yeah. I mean, it really helps to have a space, like a dedicated space, like, even if it's at your home, like I have a great, this.
I started in my home.
Yeah. Like this, like I have a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment here in Philly. Like I couldn't afford this in New York, but here I can have all this space and I have a dedicated room. Just like I could do photo shoots here, video shoots here. It's like,
oh, so cool.
It's great. So it's like, but it's really important for anybody to have a space. Like if you're going to try to be serious, like creatively, like you need a space to do it in, you know?
I mean, and don't knock it if you only have a bedroom too. Cause like you
got to start somewhere.
I definitely, while I was at the advertising job, I had a spare room and it was this crooked, tiny little broken down room. And I set up one little projector with my laptop at the time or whatever. And that's where I started. I just like with the skills that I had developed in the jobs, the motion graphics, primarily using After Effects and Premiere. That's where I would just start to experiment and, just use my one little projector. And that really is how I got started. But so in keeping with what we were talking about, like creativity before and creativity after, for me, there's like it's just such a stark comparison where I am now. And I think that the meditation really gave me like a belief in myself that I didn't have while I was at the day job. Because the whole time I was in that day job and in like the rigmarole of, just like the long work hours and the burnout and all that kind of stuff, it's like I didn't have time for myself. I didn't have time to really invest in myself 100%,
Yeah.
And so I was like building the engine while flying the plane, if you've heard that phrase, right? So like using my day job as like my investor, right, as I was putting that into my studio. But it wasn't until I started meditation that it just like opened up the doorway to like dreaming bigger.
And this was like 2020, right? When you were listening to David Lynch, like, so it was sort of at a low point, but you kind of swung out of it in a much better way, right?
Yeah. And if we do want to start talking about the pandemic, like I used
No, not really.
Not yet. No, we don't have to.
We'll save that for later because I don't want to get flagged for saying any wrong thing or whatever.
I was actually going to use it as a reason for talking about creativity.
Okay, go ahead.
In that I got into doing like a weekly live stream show on there and doing like 100 performances, like doing like a live, like from my studio. I don't know if you ever dropped into it.
You were doing that through Zoom.
We tried everything like Facebook, Instagram,
Yeah,
I think I
think
Zoom
I tuned
stuff.
in for one of those at some point. Yeah.
Yeah. So we were,
I applaud you for effort. Like you were
trying all
to
these
make
things.
it work. Like it was tough. It was tough to make anything work that year, I feel like, but.
Right. But I guess the point I wanted to make is just that you have to do those things to bring yourself out of the dark and into the light, whatever the case may be.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, unless you want to say anything more about the creativity thing, let's move on to.
Sure. Go right ahead.
So let's talk a little bit because I have my own, I don't want to say harsh things to say about this, but like, let's talk about social media.
Ugh.
Because it goes hand in hand with a lot of what we've been talking about, mostly in terms of like us as entrepreneurs, building our brand, building our business, and trying to build an audience, trying to build interest in what we're doing to get people on board. So these are all the ways that I think about social media as being sort of a necessary thing, or I refer to it as a necessary evil. But when I started with social media, and I'm talking like the dawn of Facebook and Twitter, like 2006, 2007, I really liked it back then because it was really about connecting people. And that was the glory days for me, the early days of Twitter. It met like the way I always looked at it very simply, and I guess to some degree it's still like that, but like Facebook was just an internal closed network of the people you already know. Twitter was like all these other cool, interesting people out there in the world. And I early on, I started to feel like I had these two sets of people in my life. One was like the people I already know on Facebook, and then all these other new creative. And I was in New York. Everything was like buzzing and like whatever it was, like 2006, 2007, 2008. A lot of things going on. And I was just meeting people online, and social media was like brand new, and like Twitter, and it was great. It was great. Like I would tweet things, random people would like it and retweet it, my little random thoughts or musings about whatever, or a little drawing I did or whatever. And same thing with Instagram. Like I'm probably going to do a whole separate rant specifically about Instagram in the near future on my channel because I'm just so disgruntled about Instagram. But I'll just include it. Like I loved Instagram at first, a little summary. It's like the way I'll expound and further in my video, but like I would go to bed every night. And like you, I had a corporate job and I'll get burnt out a little bit, but I always wanted to try to do something creative like every day. If I did nothing creative at work, really, I would come home. It'd be like 10 p.m., 11 p.m. And I'm like, let me open up Illustrator. Let me make a little cartoon character. and like put a little texture on it, like cool, give it a little funny, quirky line, and then I'll post it on Instagram.
Love it.
So I would do that like almost every day, like all the time.
Yeah.
And the likes would just start coming in. And it's like, oh, cool. 10 people liked it. Oh, 20 people liked it. Oh, a new follower. Cool. Great. Dopamine hits and all that. It's like, great.
Yeah.
As much as I enjoyed the process of creating the thing, it just enhances it, makes it even better when other people are appreciating it. By clicking like, by following you, then it's like, cool, I'm building an audience, building a brand here. And then, so I'd go to bed on a good note. I would feel happy. Like I went to bed like, cool, I did something creative and I got recognition for it. That's how I ended my day. And then I would wake up and I check my phone and it's like 30 more people liked it and 2 more followers. It's like, it's a great way to end the day. It's a great way to start the day, right? This was me like in the 2010s, like all the time. And whether it was Twitter or Instagram, it was like just great. And then I guess around 2015, 2016, 2017, things became very political and things just started going off the rails and then like algorithms took over. And it was, for me, it just really became less about connecting with people.
Definitely.
And to this day, I'm like, I just don't like using it. Like, and I know I'm not the only one because when you look at, did you see that documentary on Netflix, like The Social Dilemma?
Yes.
I mean, when I first saw that, I was like, yeah, it's just echoing everything that I felt and I thought, and like teenage depression and suicides and all these like loneliness and people's body image, like dysmorphia, like just people are unhappy and they go on social media and it's just making things worse.
And then they feel worse. Yeah.
And then they look at this crafted, like, oh, look at this perfect photo of this person, their perfect life. And people feel really shitty about their own life. And it's just like, it's just awful. And everybody's fishing, like trying to get likes and followers. And it's still like that today. In fact, it's even worse now. And I'm like, I kind of just don't want to be a part of it at all.
Yeah.
And you know, School of Motion, right? So like, of course, they're doing this little Somtember animation competition or whatever it is.
Yeah. Are you going to participate?
I already did. So it's over. Today was the last day. So basically, because it's the end of September, but basically every week they came up with a little prompt and you're just supposed to do it's supposed to be a quick 15-minute, like, and it was cool for me. Cause like, I haven't been doing that in a while, like just open up After Effects, play around, do something fun and just don't spend a lot of time on it and call it a day. Right. So I've done it for the last 3 weeks. I posted my last one today and I'm like, I post it and it's like, nothing, like literally no views, no likes.
Where are you posting it?
On Instagram. So, but the thing is, I'll take the same vertical. I'll post it on TikTok and I'll post it as a YouTube short. TikTok is totally random because I might get 3,000 views on it and like 50 likes on TikTok. But then the next video I post on TikTok, it gets like 10 likes or 10 views.
This will drive you nuts.
Yeah, it's just like I've looked at it all like TikTok. I'm just like, but this is what I'm explaining here is sort of my relationship with social media now. It's like, it's a total crapshoot. You're throwing seed out into a field. Like I have no expectation that anything will sprout up. In fact, this would be sort of my advice for like YouTubers and content creators starting out, as I'm sort of starting out this year, is just focus on making content, making good content and doing so regularly. I would say pick one platform as your primary thing. For me, it's YouTube. And then make a couple verticals, sprinkle it over on Instagram Reels, TikTok, because it's the same vertical video. Once you have it, you just post it other places. It's annoying because you got to add hashtags and all this stuff. It takes a little more time, but it doesn't even work anyways. It doesn't even work anyways because I'm like, nobody sees it, whether I put hashtags or not. All of it feels very pointless.
I know.
So it's disheartening. It just brings you down. It just feels like, what is the point? And then it becomes, what's the point of posting it? But then it starts to go one level deeper of like, what's the point of even making it in the first place? And that's when it really starts to assail deeper sort of existential, what am I even doing in life? Like I love to create, but nobody cares. And then I think,
why is it really important that people care? What if it's just something that you're doing to find out who you are, right? And it's for your own self-fulfillment.
Right. And this is the whole deeper question of it is like, you know, it's like if a tree falls in the forest, nobody hears it. Did it really fall or whatever the thing is? It's like, And it's sad in a way because like I have so much stuff on my hard drives Like you have all of your millions of notebooks, you said, right? And I'm sure you have a bunch of cool little experiments and stuff on your computer, your hard drives as well.
That never sees the light of day.
Never
Dies on the
sees
hard
the light
drive.
of day.
Yeah,
Nobody
yeah.
will ever see it. And I bet you there's some stuff in there that are some real gems, and people out there in the world would appreciate at least some of it.
Probably so. And then, but it has to go through your own censor in order to get there too, you know?
Sure.
Yeah.
But it also now has to go through this thing of like now that the September thing is open, like I'm not going to keep posting on Instagram. Like it's more deflating. That was the word I was trying to think of earlier. It's more deflating than anything, and, you know, because I'm like, I know, like I'll, not to sound arrogant or whatever, but sometimes I'll just look back at my Instagram feed and I'll just be like, this is so good. And I say that in completely not a
I understand.
arrogant way. I'm like, the level of care and thought I put into each post, like the funny caption, the little cartoon line, the texture on it, the little animation, the music choice that I did, like it's tight, you know, it's like a little quality morsel, the same way I used to do with my introversion, like daily little things. Each
Which
one
is
was
what led me to you in the first place.
Yeah. But this is the thing. It was the internet was different then, because it was like, you just post good things. Like if you build it, they will come. Right. And I feel like this is my whole long rant of getting back to social media, which is like, I just feel like that's just not the case anymore with social media, which is why I've checked out. So that's sort of my whole setup about social media. But now
that's a lot, man.
Yeah. So that's me. But what about you? What's your take on it?
I feel very similar in the way that you do. I do think that if you're somebody who's starting out or starting a business, yes, pick 1-2 platforms and focus on those, because there are so many different directions you can go in. And it's so hard. In the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey, I was like, I need to have something everywhere. And I was putting stuff on TikTok and, you know, Instagram and Facebook.
Pinterest.
Like even though I don't care about Facebook as much anymore, or, you know, all those other platforms, like I was still trying to fill all the buckets, you know what I mean? And that was just exhausting. And I find creating media for social media totally exhausting. And I do ask myself, like, why am I even bothering to do it? However, I also really love sharing things that I love. And so in the last couple of weeks, I had a solo art show with one of my immersive installations. And the only way to get people out is really to connect with them, right? And where do I have the most connection? And it's pretty much, for me, it's Instagram, it's YouTube. And, you know, I even dropped back into Facebook for a moment because there's a different audience in different places.
Right.
And LinkedIn too. You know, I was like, you know what, if I can make one piece of content and just share them on all of those things, you know, I will sprinkle it out there. Like you said, throw the seeds and kind of see where it hits. And I'm not going to do that everywhere, but I'm going to do that to the places that I'm still trying to connect to. Now, the thing that's really frustrating is that if you start to look at analytics, it really does show that only 2% of your audience will see your work.
Yeah.
And that is just the most absolutely frustrating thing. It does make you say, like, why do I even bother creating anything in the first place? For me, I want to build a catalog. Like, ultimately, I do want to use YouTube, but I actually have the least amount of followers on there. So if anybody's listening to this and you've enjoyed this conversation, hollydanger everywhere and on YouTube. I want to build that channel up because it's a catalog of my life. Like I really love documenting the creative process, like what we were saying earlier. So it's not just about creating the art, but it's showing somebody how that art came to be. Where did the ideas initiate, and look at the process of like what it takes to build and to develop an idea that is really meaningful to you. So I'm looking at more as like a catalog for myself of like my life's journey as an artist. And then as a byproduct, I can steal some clips out of that catalog and put it on social media. And the people that are like, you know, there's the term like 1,000 true fans, right? People who really, they are out there. So what if let's say I only impact, you know, 1,000 true fans over my career, you know, maybe that's not everybody's goal and everybody wants to have millions of views on YouTube and all that stuff. But I don't know. If I can make an actual difference with people on some level, then I think I've done my job as an artist. I have this mission as an artist where, you know, to be clever as a projection artist, I say that I project light into the world, right? So I literally and figuratively am using my projection and immersive experiences to uplift the people that experience them and to uplift myself. So that's my driving mission, and that's what keeps me sharing. I think the challenge that I'm having is how to allow yourself to be more visible, how to trust yourself to allow people to see you, to really see who you are, and to be authentic and not be
vulnerable,
have
and authentic.
the mask of social media. So,
Yeah.
so I'm doing that as like a self-development practice. Really.
Yeah. You said a couple of things there. Hopefully I can remember. Toward the end, you're talking about like doing it for yourself, which I agree with.
Catalog. Right?
Yeah.
The catalog of our lives,
yeah.
right?
You sounded like me doing introversion. Like that was my mentality back then. Was I felt like
maybe we
my
need to
life,
get back there.
I've given up. Like I tried to do introversion as a podcast. This is me starting again with a completely different focus. But when I did introversion, I started it at the start of 2020, not knowing the pandemic was about to start, and it did.
Oh, wow.
And I wanted to sort of get back to documenting my life, kind of what you're talking about, and doing little creative experiments and all the random thoughts and quirks, just like I did introversion before. But I wanted to introduce this podcast format to it.
Sure.
And it just didn't take. And I think part of it was the circumstances of life. Part of it was just I had no life to report on because I wasn't doing anything because they took my life away for 2 years or whatever. So
Understood.
So I was very bitter and angry about that. And I just ranted about that every week on the podcast for like a year and a half. And I'm like, after it was all done, like last year, I listened to it. I was like, I think I put the whole thing just behind a paywall and I just like hid it away because I'm like, there's no point in listening. I was just like bitter and jaded and angry. And I was just like, what's the point of listening to this?
Right.
The thing is, when you talk about genuineness and vulnerability and authenticity, that was authentically me in that phase of my life. So it was all honest and true. Yeah,
that's valuable to somebody to even just hear you expressing yourself.
Yeah.
Not everybody feels like they're comfortable enough to even put a microphone in front of their mouth, right? Like I'm still learning how to do that. But I think that that's what people need to hear to see you expressing yourself, and something resonates from what you say in that person who's listening, and it can take them down a new path, you know?
Yeah. A couple of things about that is like while we're on that topic, and I want to jump back to another thing you said earlier. But on this topic, I feel like I learned through that process, and I kind of learned about podcasting in general. And I feel like long format conversations, on the one hand, they're not for everybody. And in the sense that we live in an ADD TikTok society now, culture, especially the younger you go. So yeah, I mean, it's like, I think there's a place for that. I think there's a place for little kicks and stuff. But there's also a place for like going deep and having in-depth conversations about things and like real, not scripted, not, just raw thoughts, emotions, people connecting, conversing. So I enjoy podcasts for that, and I want to bring that back now with this podcast. But I think the difference is like, I want this and everything I'm doing to really offer value to people, like I want people to be able to tune in and get a really honest take on like the fact that you shared your story for the first time publicly, like in this dedicated way where you have this platform to talk at length about it. Like that's awesome, because otherwise that your story wouldn't ever be told the way you were able to do today. And those are the kind of things both for you and you'll have like some friends and people listening to it as well. So they get to hear your story as well.
Right.
So, but in addition to that, like we're not just personally telling our stories. Like I think we're giving little bits of advice and things that like people can relate to. I'm like, whether you're younger or older, like you're going through your corporate job, you have dreams and aspirations in life. Like these are universal things that a lot of people can relate to.
100%.
And I do generally want to keep the vibe of this podcast and my brand like way more positive than because I just went, obviously it was 2020, but I went very down and negative with introversion because that's where I was at in life. But now I'm like, okay, not that I don't have negative thoughts. I have negative thoughts all the time, and
everybody has negative thoughts.
There's a lot of things in the world I'm not happy about, but like I just put the blinders on for this now, and I'm just like, keep it creative, productive, positive, and like that's what this is all about. So that
you learn from those negative thoughts. You learn from the negativity because it provides contrast to everything else, right? Because it really shows you what you do want and where you want to go.
Yeah. And the other thing I was going to say in response to something you said earlier, when you said like, it means something to you, the impact that you can have on maybe just a few people, right? Like not everybody.
Definitely not everybody.
That resonates with me. And I'm like, that's a good reminder for me and for everybody listening. Like if you're a creator out there, it's not about, just like we said, it's not about having the yacht and the 3 mansions and it's about your life. It's about joy. It's about happiness. It's about meaning and purpose in your life. And like, I thought of this thought the other, this is the kind of thing I would normally tweet, but these are the shower thoughts that I have, and I jot them down on my list, and maybe someday I'll actually tweet these things or make a graphic about it. But it's like, the thought was, as you were saying that, it was, by definition, most people are not exceptional.
What do you mean by that?
So if you let that sink in a little bit, so it's like, it's a little bit of an insult. It's a little bit of an insult to the masses, but it is true. By definition, if you're an exceptional person, that means there's something exceptional about you. Like, you're not the norm. The norm is not exceptional. The norm is just the norm. You see what I'm saying? So by definition, if you're exceptional, you're not just the regular normal person.
What does it mean to be exceptional?
You can kind of tell, like, people are like you're an exceptional person, and you're doing things that like most people don't even think to do, and it wouldn't occur to them to sort of, to change your name, to go by danger, to leave your corporate job, to travel the world, to take on these other things, to take these risks, to create an art studio, to still, like, when everybody else is shutting down for the pandemic, you're like bringing people together online. Like, that's not normal. You realize that, right? and I say that in the best possible complimentary way. Like, that's exceptional.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, but this is what I mean when I say, like, by definition, most people are not exceptional. So the flip side of that also, it's a little bit of a jab at your standard NPC people. But going back to your audience and the content you're putting out there, or I'm putting out there, or anybody's putting out there, why should we expect exceptional content or something that has a special flavor to it or resonate with billions of people?
What an amazing question.
Right? I'm just thinking, like, by definition, only if you're putting out content that's different and unique and random and weird and fun and whatever, it's like, that's not most people. So by definition, if you're putting out exceptional content, only exceptional people are probably going to appreciate it. But that by definition means fewer people are going to appreciate it. That's sort of what I mean by it.
Interesting. I never thought about things that way. I feel like I've curated the people that I follow. Like, it is a bunch of exceptional things that inspire me to want to do better and do more. So I've kind of surrounded myself by that input. But that said, I mean, I don't have a ton of followers. Like, I think I have like 3,000 people on Instagram and 3,000 on Facebook, and 200 on YouTube. Like, but I've also not made it my goal to grow followers. I mean, obviously I want to. I'm a small business and I need people to be aware of who I am and what I provide.
Yeah.
But at the time, I'm also only one person. And so I can only take on a certain amount of work at a particular time. And so I guess I'm not actively looking to like build that up. If I was, which I'm getting, honestly, in my business, I'm 5 years running my own business at this point, just on my own. I'm at that point now where I'm going to start hiring people, which is like a really exciting point.
Yeah, I was just
at.
about to ask you, are you interested in expanding and growing?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was going to reflect that back to you too, because it sounds like you could be somebody who could hire somebody at some point.
I would love to hire a social media
for social
marketing
media.
person. Yeah,
I was going to say, I have a contact I can share after this with you. And it's somebody that I've been talking to for a long time that I do want to hire. And she's probably going to be my first hire because
That's
I don't.
so funny that we're on the same page about our first hire would be a social media marketing person.
But I think what has stopped me from doing it is I don't know why. Like, I don't know the strategy behind it. And I think that's what I need help figuring out is like, what do I want to get out of that visibility? Do I want to get more exposure to my art because I want to sell it, because I want to do more shows nationally and internationally? Like, who do I want to reach? And, who's the right audience? I don't fully know that picture. And so I need help figuring that part out. And then, I'm also, like you said earlier, like in my business, wearing all the different hats. So I actually have to be working with the clients that do come to me regularly. And so I feel like with social media, I go in and out of being on there and consistently providing content because I can get busy doing a commercial project right now. I'll completely ignore Instagram for like a month.
Yeah.
And then next month I have an art show coming up and I post every single day.
Right.
So I'm a little inconsistent right now. And that is something that I'm working on. But I definitely think that both of us could use help in this area. And I think everybody, once they have a business and they get to this point, I think it's about allowing yourself to trust somebody else to help these things, right?
Yeah, I think people like you and I, like, we're very not controlling, but just very kind of particular and very specific. And you can get it done right if you do it yourself, but it
Yes.
involves a certain level of trust, to trust that somebody else can get your vision. Like, I think this is why, I don't know if you feel this way too, but with people I work, like I still work with this guy in New York and we're kind of friends now. And like, I actually want to have him on the podcast coming up soon. So he's sort of been my boss. Like, we've been working together for a while, but when you get so used to working with somebody for so long, it's like, you kind of don't want to leave it, which is probably why you stayed at your job for so long, the first one, because not just for the enjoyment of the familiarity, you like working with the people, but also there's like a certain comfort and just ease of peace of mind where you just know, they get it. They know me.
That was like financial comfort to stability, you know?
Yeah. But like, I think branching out, it's almost like to date somebody new. It's the same thing. It's like people stay in a relationship where they're comfortable in it. But like, to branch out, it's like, I got to trust a new person and they might let me down. You don't know if you can really count on them, that kind of thing.
It comes down to trust.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Trust that you're going to be okay. You're going to be able to handle whatever comes next.
So I guess for me, like, eventually I'll probably hire somebody, but I feel like I have to justify it first with like enough income coming in.
I'm the same way.
Because right now I'm just like building things up, but it's always like I just got to a good place with my videos for the YouTube channel where I'm like, I sat down and shot 2 videos in one sitting. So like back to back, that saves a lot of time because I don't have to set up and everything. So now I'm like, I haven't had a week yet where I post 2 videos in 1 week. And it could have been this week. It wasn't, but it's because I had to go to the dentist yesterday. You and I are recording right now. I'm on a client project and I signed up with Riverside and I figured out this whole podcast. So it's like a lot of extra things this week. But the point is, I'm getting to a good place where I'm speeding up that workflow. And then now with Riverside, if the podcasting, like I'm starting this up. So like once you set up enough things, you get into a good rhythm. I think, I feel like if you're doing enough, and this is like general advice, like I feel like if you do enough of the right things consistently and long enough, it should just fall into place, That's
what I'm hoping for too. It's the consistency part that I struggle with. Because of everything that you just described, because life happens and I don't know how to stick with it when other, like a big corporate project lands, because I don't have people to rely on right now for help, and I take on all of it. I'm the social media manager, I'm the editor, I'm the business development person, right? Like I'm the artist. And it's so hard to carve out days for each one of those individual roles. So I try to mash them into every single day doing a different task. And it's overwhelming.
Yeah. It can easily lead to burnout too, especially if you don't see whatever the metrics are or whatever you said you want to pinpoint what are those things you're working toward, right? So, but you get a sense of them. And if you feel like you're not getting there, then it could be very disheartening and deflating.
100%.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on from social media. So we've talked about creativity. We talked about social media. All right. So let's talk for a second here about productivity. So,
okay. Yeah, that's a great segue, honestly.
Yeah. Cause like, I don't know if I said it earlier in this podcast or before when we were talking beforehand, but like to me, creativity and productivity, they just go hand in hand. So it's like, to me, it's the yin and the yang, it's the right brain, left brain. So how productive would you say you are? I mean, you get a lot done. Would you call yourself a highly productive person, or are you pretty sloppy and disorganized and like you could stand to improve? And a little bit of both.
Definitely a bit of both. I have learned a lot over my 5 years of working for myself. One of the things that's helped me out the most, I've tried a lot of different software, different softwares that are out there like Monday and Asana and whatever. I landed on Trello, which have you used Trello?
I've used Trello before.
It's pretty basic. It doesn't have a lot of bells and whistles.
I feel like Trello, when I think of Trello, is just like Kanban boards.
So it's like sticky notes.
Okay.
Right? Do you know what like digital sticky notes? And I've marked them off into different categories, like what I'm doing today.
Yeah.
What I'm doing next week, what I'm doing in 2 weeks. And then kind of like a vault of like where you're talking about having a zillion ideas and you'll get to them one day. You throw them all in the vault so they get out of your head, right? And they're in a digital place. And when the time is right, you move those sticky notes, those digital sticky, into the 2 weeks or the 1 week or the today, or to the done.
Right.
It's pretty basic and simple, but
Kanban board.
The Kanban. Yeah. So that format, like I said, I've tried a lot of different things. The simplicity and ease of that has really changed my life, honestly. You're able to attach dates to stuff. You're able to add images and whatnot. So I'm starting there with my organization. And I think that I'm most organized when I'm working for a client because I know
It
like
just
I
has
have
to
a
get
certain
done.
system. Yeah. But I also I know the full process of the system, how long things are going to take. And I haven't really developed like a full system for my own business because there's just too many things to do. Yeah, as far as like social media and, the personal project, like, do I want to focus on YouTube? Do I want to focus on a podcast? Like, there's only so much of me to go around and, I spread myself too thin. I get a little chaotic there, but I'm learning and growing every day.
You are an iOS person, right? I saw your text messages were blue earlier, right? Yeah,
I'm Mac all the way.
Okay, that's cool. It's funny how I didn't think about it, how deep into the cult I am with Apple and everything. But
oh yeah,
like when I have certain friends who are Android and whatever, it's like all these like kinks start showing. It's like life just becomes that more. I texted my friend and they're like,
texting, yeah,
the image is like all crusty and whatever. And I'm
yeah. That happened to me too.
Or like if I tried to send a file, it was too big, it wouldn't go through, or just like, yeah. So, and then I realized too, like my channel is basically an Apple channel. Like so much of if I'm not doing a tutorial specifically about something in Mac OS or iOS, it would be an app or something that I use on my Mac and it's not available on PC. So
right.
So you don't use PCs at all?
Well, during the pandemic, I did purchase and create my own PC. Like I had it built for me.
Okay. Custom built.
And yeah, because I was using my iMac. You said that you have an iMac as well that you're using right now. So I had a 2017 iMac.
This is a 2019 iMac right now we're on.
Okay, that's a powerhouse. That was like it served me well for the beginning of my business.
Did you get an iMac Pro or an iMac?
It was pretty sure it was an iMac Pro. Yeah.
You got an iMac.
I always go for the most expensive one.
Okay, yeah. You got the Pro. Mine is not a Pro. It was just a 5K iMac, so it's not as powerful.
Okay.
This thing,
yeah,
but it's held up. It's held up.
I just was like, if I'm going all in on my business, knowing that I'm doing After Effects and large scale immersive, experiences, like I was like, I need whatever the best is all the time.
Yeah, of course.
But I was just going to say that the PC was amazing for that, but I'm such a Mac-oriented person that I really struggled to do anything on the PC because I don't know the key commands, and I didn't want to take time to learn.
Yeah.
And then the number one thing is AirDrop. The fact that I can drop something from my phone to my Mac, draw something on my iPad, and open it up in Illustrator on my desktop, like that's all I need. I don't need the PC is a paperweight in my studio right now. And I'm going to use it to run installations, but I'm probably not going to be creating on it anytime soon.
Yeah. See, this is sort of what I mean when I say like we're so deep in the cult.
Deep in the cult.
It's like, our devices all talk nicely to each other. We get along with other Apple iPhone users. It's
makes things easy.
Yeah,
I know. So, I'm wearing the Apple the AirPods, which I can't live without.
Right. Yeah. They never fit in my ears though, so I don't use those in particular.
They have different little ear things that you could put in to help them.
Yeah, I've tried. Maybe it was a while ago, but I tried the other ones and they didn't fit in still.
Okay.
But
yeah.
I'm also not an Apple like a watch person. Do you have a watch?
The
Apple.
I got the first one and was like, "What is this?" No.
I never had any interest.
No, same.
But yeah, okay. So besides us going off about Apple and stuff, so like, do you tend to structure your days like pretty rigidly, or like? Also related to this question, another thing I wanted to ask you is like, you can combine all of your stuff in with creative process and all stuff, but like, what's like a typical day like for you?
Great question. It changes every single day, and I'm actively working on developing a system. Now, here I am, like I said, 5 years into my business, and I feel like I'm just learning now that I need to separate my days, like my admin days where I'm planning, where I'm emailing, correspondence. I need to separate those days, taxes and whatever, all that stuff. I need to separate all those days from hollydanger who wants to be an artist, because what I realized was trying to combine the business owner and the person that wants to explore new mediums and new ideas. I was really and am really struggling trying to squeeze that in like for an hour here and an hour there. Like I really need to say that Tuesdays like are the day that I'm just going to let myself be pulled. Like, you know, you said you had a million different directions you want to go in on Tuesday or whatever. I'm just making that up.
Yeah.
I'm going to allow myself that wherever my heart desires to go creatively, I am Holly the artist on Tuesdays, and I'm going to shut off my devices.
everything
I'm
else
not
out.
going to be available. And even if that's like, maybe realistically, that's like 3 hours or whatever. I think it's just having the dedicated time to really lean in, to allow yourself not to be the business owner and to be the responsible one, because it really limits your play, like your time to like actually explore, like, where does my heart really want to go? And so that's new for me, because every single day I have been like, ever since I left the day job, all that's been on my mind is, how do I keep this business running? How do I keep making money? I'm afraid that I'm not going to have money coming in. I'm afraid, like when there's a dip and I don't have clients, I'm afraid they're never going to come back. You know what I mean? And so I'm constantly in that lack mindset, or at least I was. I'm learning how to trust the process and trust that if I'm finding joy and like where I want to go with my artwork, that it actually is going to translate in these projects, and those projects are going to attract clients, and it's just going to be an endless ripple and a cycle. So yeah, as I stand right now, I don't really have a set day to day. And I really just live by that Trello board of like what needs to happen. And I really hope to pull in like those things that are like, you know, one day I want to, you know, whatever it is, like I try to pull in at least one of those one days, you know, every day. And I want to make it an active part of my life to connect to people, because I feel like, you know, and I'm sure you can relate to this too, working for yourself, by yourself, I'm alone all day long. And it's so easy. I enjoy being alone. I love the creative process of figuring stuff out on my own and, you know, being independent, but I can find myself hermiting and not connecting to people and relying on social media for that, which we've already talked about is not a great way to connect. So in the last week, I've really actively made an effort to like go out to lunch or to coffee with people. And that's opened up a part of me that I feel like I didn't even know I needed. Like that, I feel like it's so important to get out there and to connect with people. And like, I hate the word networking, but like, that's so important for us to continue to grow our spheres. So I'm like making that a part of my weeks, at least like one day a week or whatever, trying to bring that in. The rest of the time is split between self-care stuff. Actually, like never made this a priority in my life, but like self-care in the first half of the day, and then work for the second half of the day into the evening. And what I mean by that is like a solid morning routine, which is like, I was never a morning person until I started my own business, but like writing every single morning, like writing out like priorities, ideas, how do I want to focus my day, like the top 3 things that I want to focus on every day, and then making myself go out for a walk, even if I don't want to, just like being in nature, being outside, just finding happiness, you know, and then coming into work and sitting behind a computer and like having that balance between the two worlds. All these things, never knew I could do this having the 9-to-5 job, but like now that I'm on my own, like unlearning the 9-to-5, like unlearning that I don't have to sit here 10 hours, 12 hours a day. That's been a huge life lesson for me. And like, I highly recommend it. It sounds like you can't do it when you're like worried about money and stuff like this. But as soon as you lean into taking care of yourself, you just become so much happier. And then that translates to every conversation you have with your clients and every person you're networking with. And then you just become magnetic, and those clients want to come to you. And at least that's what I've found. So the more peace and happiness I bring into my life, the legit happier my business and everything becomes.
Yeah. It's funny how it seems kind of roundabout, you know, like
opposite of what we learned growing up.
I used to think about sleep like I'm losing 8 hours of productivity every time I sleep.
Same.
But now I'm like, the opposite thing is like, it's so the opposite of other people, how they look at it. But for me, I'm like, everybody's like, they're trying to discipline themselves to wake up early or whatever. I don't have a problem waking up early. I'll wake up at 6 or 7 now. I'm not a morning person, but there's so much I want to get done that I'll wake up at 6 or 7 and just get to it. But I have to discipline myself to sleep in later.
Yes.
So I don't set an alarm anymore. And me
neither.
I hope that I can just sleep in. Because like in my I use a habits app. I've done a video on this. It's called Awesome Habits. It's a great app.
I don't know it.
Oh, I'll send you a link. I did a whole review on it.
Okay. Awesome Habits.
It's pretty thorough, and they've actually improved it. I was in touch with the developer this year, and like I made points in there about what I didn't like about the app, and he's remedied all of those things.
Oh,
So
cool.
as we enter into 2025, I'm going to make a follow-up video, and I'm going to showcase all the new improvements. But it's so good, this app.
I've got one for you after you tell me about this.
So I have my routine. My life runs through this app now in terms of like my daily like habits, and you can set a timer for it. So basically, I don't set an alarm, but I set the timer as soon as I'm ready to go to bed, and it's ticking. My minimum is I need to get at least 6 hours of sleep, and it automatically keeps timing beyond that. And whenever I wake up, I can look at it, and it's like, oh, okay, I slept 7 hours and 20 minutes today. Cool. And it keeps track of all your data, so I can look back and say, oh, I've been averaging this much sleep this week or this month. And now with iOS 18, they added this new feature where you can track your mood.
Oh, wow.
So what I'm interested in, I haven't really delved into this that deep. I did start tracking my mood this past week since I updated iOS 18, but I want to be able to link it with like other habits and things. So I can kind of like, if I can see like, oh, my mood is really going down when I sleep only this amount, or, you know, like when I'm not working out, my mood is down, or my mood's always up whenever I'm in the gym. Like to make those kind of correlations, like, you know, to me, it's like valuable data. You know, I kind of know it, but
I was going to say, you know that when you go to the gym, you sleep better and you feel better, right?
Yeah. But it's just satisfying. Again, these are, like I mentioned earlier, the little joys in life. Like, I like to document. I like to see my progress. I like to like, and this is sort of a little bit of what I explained briefly in my first habits video for the app. But I was like, keeping track of your habits should not be a chore. It should just be, and it's not like you failed because you didn't do this one particular thing this day. It's okay.
Sometimes I feel that way. When I start to track and I don't do what I say I do kind of get down on myself for that.
Yeah, it's natural. You know? A lot of people do, but I've gotten to the point where I'm like, okay, I just didn't do that today. Like, I'm not worried about breaking my streak or whatever. I'm just like, the point is just to daily be reminded. And when you do get things right, like I look at it more as like a positive reinforcement, not a punishment sort of thing. Right. So, but yeah, it just helps keep me on track. And I have like so many, like the point is like, I never reach 100% completed for a day. It's very rarely, because it's like, there's just so many things on my list that it's like,
of course,
but I score like 70%, 80%, 90% a day.
I mean, that's all we can hope for, right? It's 80% on everything, honestly. Like there is no 100%, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Like to me, like just to kind of wrap this up about productivity, but to me, it's like the micro and the macro, you know, like to me, it's about, and this is something I've started to get a little better about this year, because I needed to start thinking more long-term. It's not just about winning the day, because you could just keep winning the day, but in the big picture, you might not be heading toward your bigger goals in life, you know? So I've started to look, because I'm not a long-term planner. I don't make plans with people like, hey, yeah, let's go to that thing 8 months from now. Like I never do that. That's very rare. But I'm trying to get better about thinking like, where do I want to be by the end of this year? You know?
Oh, wow. That's pretty long-term planning, I think. I don't do that.
Yeah. But maybe that's something for you to think about, because I think
it is.
Like when we talk about the trajectory of our life, it's not just about, winning today is awesome. Like that's a great place to start.
Yeah, all we have is now.
Yeah. But I just feel like the accumulation of these todays that we win need to be pointing us in a direction that we choose. Like that's the same thing we were talking about your business earlier, about knowing where you actually want to be, and you're trying to figure that out for yourself. Like these are important concepts for you and me and for everybody to individually like spend some time thinking about. Who am I? What am I all about? Where do I want to be next year or 5 years from now? And like, you know, so that's sort of how I connect the micro and the macro all the time. Like I have these little tools and these habit apps and these things, but it's great, but it's not enough. You know, it's not enough to just win the day is what I'm saying. But that's how I've operated for too long. But now I'm starting to get a little bit better about what is the bigger picture, or where am I heading with this?
It's interesting. And like what came up for me just listening to you talk about that is like, what would happen if you let go of all those apps?
You know, I saw a video, I didn't click on it, but I might have bookmarked it for later. Some dude was like, I turned off my phone for like a week or like a month, and this is what happened. And I'm curious, because I'm like,
it's an interesting challenge.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Because we can get so caught up in the metrics and the analytics of all these things. But like, what if it really just came down to how you feel, and you like really tapped into what am I feeling do you think that you'd really like fall off of the habits? You need that app to like keep you? No. Yeah. It's just, it's more of a habit, because you enjoy learning
it's
about
more like
the little joys.
I wake up, I do my morning routine, like I do
Yeah.
like oil pull and
Oh, I haven't done that.
I do like AG1 and I do like Brazil nuts and it's just like I check them off the list, but it's like I don't need the list. I'll just do it automatically by this point.
But it's interesting because that list gives you that dopamine hit of
Yes.
I did that.
Exactly. That's
Right?
the value. It's just like adding that little bit of pleasure to the mundane. Because let's face it.
Totally. It's not fun to do
Most
those
of
things,
life
right?
is kind of boring, for people. I think most of life is boring. Like most of life is first of all, most of your life you're sleeping or I don't know.
That's crazy.
Compared
totally.
to any one task. I mean, obviously you're awake longer than you're asleep. But compared to any one task, most people, you probably spend the most time at your job or in school or asleep. And how many people hate school and how many people hate their jobs? So the point is life is not that exciting all the way through.
I'm having the best time ever. I really am. My days are totally exciting. I'm having so much fun.
Sure. Right. Yeah. Sure you are.
I am. I really mean it. Totally. From the bottom of my
You're not
heart.
being sarcastic?
I'm not being sarcastic.
Okay. But
I'm not being sarcastic.
I guess we're
because
both
I'm
kind of saying the same way that if you can
building
find enjoyment
something,
in the moment, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So for me, these little habit apps, the dopamine hits are ways of getting me to enjoy the moment or more, or keep me in, you know what I mean? I don't know. It's I'm a human being.
And I was human. I am human still.
And you have to factor it in, the dopamine, the pleasure, and I think because some friends of mine have told me dude, you're the most disciplined person that I know, you
sound very disciplined.
I am
in the regimen.
I do achieve a lot. I'm a high achiever. You're a high achiever as well.
100%.
But but I'm honest. Nobody knows. I do waste a lot of time. I'm just lollygagging around, or I'll go down a YouTube rabbit hole, and I'm just the cinema, one to the next, to the next, to the next.
Yeah, but maybe that's not wasted time. Maybe your body needs that rest.
Exactly. That's why for me, it's the whole input-output thing.
Yeah.
So I don't look at it as a waste of time, but I think it's just
energy for energy.
because you're an introvert, right? I guess the way you're describing, you sound like an introvert, even though you're
Am I?
Well,
I don't know.
You don't know? You never took the Myers-Briggs test?
I never took the test. I also heard that there's a term ambivert, which is you're both.
Yeah,
right?
You're probably an ambivert because I
think I'm both.
Okay, because I always thought of you as an extrovert, but based on what you were just saying a few minutes ago, I'm you sound pretty introverted.
What?
Well, you said you spend all your day by yourself.
Yes.
And then you're fine with that. But then you're you have to actively schedule in time with people just to do that, to remember that you're a human being.
Is that a definition of being an introvert?
That sounds very introverted because that's how I operate.
Okay, well, it's interesting to hear that from you, who I totally see as an expert on introversion.
I am I am introversion.com.
Okay, well, maybe that is true. God, we could probably talk for 6 more hours about this, a whole topic on just being introverted. You've given me a lot to think about. I mean, I have more to say about it, but I don't even know how many directions we want to go into.
Food for thought. I'm always thinking. I'm an overthinker. So I'm always thinking about things. And
me too. Overthinker.
Yeah. So
is that a trait?
I don't think it's a good thing. I think I didn't put this in my list.
I know.
I didn't put this in my list, but this is a perfect segue into, because overthinking is not a good thing. And I would also put in the same category, perfectionism is not a good thing.
God,
and
no.
it plagues me, but let's get into that now. Let's go there. So
let's go there.
So what is, so you would also label yourself as a perfectionist?
I don't like labels. I also don't believe that there is perfect. I've definitely gone to the extremes where I don't want to show somebody something until I'm satisfied with it. And it takes a really long time for me to become satisfied with something I'm making. However, I feel like as I've learned and grew over the last 5 years, just being in my business and creating artwork and client work and all this stuff, I've really relaxed. I mean, I've really relaxed to the point that 80% is what I'm striving for.
There's a sweet spot.
Because you got to let go.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
There's a sweet spot where there's the law of diminishing returns, right? So it's the more hours you put into it, the return is not going to be much. So you may as well just stop.
Right. And I also always used to think that the more time I spend on it, the better it's going to get, like it, kind of the inverse of what you just said. But like, it's not true. It's not true. It's like those days that I was telling about self-care, like the days that I go out and take a walk and have like a really good day, I can come into the studio and bang something out in like an hour that maybe before I would have spent 8 hours on. And like I'm telling you, all of this is so eye-opening to me that you don't have to be that perfectionist sitting at your desk. Like really the just being good to yourself really just changes the game.
Yeah. And like linking this back up with social media and what we were talking about earlier, like one thing I've realized is we mentioned how it's kind of a crapshoot. We mentioned how it's like throwing seed in the field.
Yes.
But like this has been the case for me already with this YouTube channel. Like I've put out maybe like 10 videos this year, which on the one hand sounds like a lot, on the other hand, not a lot at all. But it's like I've gotten quicker. But what I want to say here is I might put so much time into one video and it gets like 200 views. And
Same.
I might put something like quickly together and whatever, and it's like over 1,000 views or whatever. So it's like,
so you can't tell. So you got to just let it go. You know what I mean?
So
my struggle there, let me just say this one thing. It's like, I will take so long to make a video that it'll be months before I post another one. And I don't want to be that person. Like I want to be able to just regularly have a dialogue with the people who care about the work I'm doing, because that's fulfillment for my life and it's fulfillment for their life. Right. So I owe it to the people who are interested in putting it out there and being myself and not worrying about that perfectionist hat. Right.
Yes.
Keep
and
we're
talking specifically now, I think, about like content, right? Not like video.
I hate the word content,
I know, but that's what we're talking about, like social media content, not the video that you're finally crafting for your art show, right? That's like a different,
That's a different thing. Yeah. Social media, let me say this, like social media, I have really just let go. I am not a perfectionist at all when it comes to social media, because I almost don't feel like it matters what you post. I think that just by posting it all, it's like, hey, Jay Kaslo exists. Oh yeah, Jay. Like let me check out what he's doing. All it is a red flag that
just
comes up.
Staying on people's radar.
That's all it is. So I don't even think it matters what you post. It's just posting consistently.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. That's a good way of thinking of that.
That's the way I look at social media, especially because I don't care about it as much right now. Maybe that will change, but on the stuff that matters to me, I spend more time.
No, that's sure. That's a much healthier perspective to have on it, I think, is if, first of all, you're not attached to what you're creating.
No.
It's not to say you don't enjoy creating it or you're not proud of it, but it's more about when do you let go? And sounds like you'll let go very quickly and easily.
Social media. Yeah. I mean,
it's like, it's cheap. It's cheap. It's just,
it is cheap, you know, and I don't want to put out cheap content. And I'm not saying like just put out cheap content. Like I put out things
our standards are probably pretty high. So for us to call something cheap or lower, it's like, it's still probably pretty good. Let's be honest. Like
that is true. No, you're so right there. What was I going to say? There was something there about social media, you know, because I don't, I know what I was going to say. I never thought that I would be the type of person to use templates when it comes to social media. But I don't know if you've seen like Instagram reels, they can actually, you just click like 10 different images and it gives you like a starting point for an edit.
Instagram reel template. You just throw the images into it, right? And it just fills it up.
Yeah.
I've never done that, but I'm aware that it exists. Yeah.
And I mean, it sounds cheesy, especially coming from like an artist who's an editor who cares about the craft of editing. I do, but I don't really care about social media. And so I just use those tools because they make my life it's just a little easier. And I feel like I can get something that I'm like, that's good enough. Right. Yeah. And then I put that out there. It's good enough.
Good enough is really key. You said it lightly, but like, that's sort of what we're talking about. The sweet spot or just like good enough.
Social media, good enough.
Yeah. No, I like that.
Cool.
I think that's, you're shifting my perspective a little bit. Not radically, but that's a good way of me thinking about social media is like, treat it like it's just
low hanging fruit.
It is what it is. I don't have to hate it. I could just accept it as like, it's just putting out a feeler, You know what else is really nice is when you go down the road of supporting other people. Like I've curated my Instagram, so I'm just following artists and other creators that are in my field. And I love like when something inspires me,
it's so easy. It takes 2 seconds to just share and say, something nice about that person's work or whatever. And it connects you to that person, right? So use it for networking. You know what I mean? Like, take a look at what I've done on my Instagram, which is, it's not too much of a lift for me. And like, it's just a catalog of the work. So anybody, because don't you feel like people don't really go to websites anymore? They go to like your social media if they want to learn about you, right? So it kind of has to, in 2 seconds, show a flavor of your experience.
But that's where I'm like, I agree with you on that. But that's where I start to feel a little ashamed of my Instagram thing, because I'm like, it just used to look more impressive if people came to my thing and I'm like, oh, like hundreds of people are liking your post. Like, oh, he's really. Now, if a new person comes to my Instagram page and they're like, 3 people like this guy must not be really good. And people just.
That's funny. I don't think about that at all when I'm looking at other people's work. I just look in and say, do I like this work? Do I resonate with what the person's saying?
I know, but that's you and me. Like the average regular person out there, I think people just judge superficially very quickly.
Do you want to attract those average Joes?
Right.
Who do you want
then we're back to the exceptional people thing, So yeah.
In the smaller bucket. And you have to be okay with that.
Right. True.
Because not everybody's going to like your style, and that's okay.
Yeah. And this is one thing I remembered that I wanted to say earlier about, and this is sort of advice to people starting out on YouTube and whatnot. But I've seen your Facebook posts over the years, and I
still plop it in there.
Yeah. And I've compared it with mine, and I see other people, friends of mine on Facebook, and I'm like, there's certain people who just seem to thrive on Facebook.
Yes.
And I am not one of those people. So basically,
my mom thrives.
Sure. Yeah. So like I post stuff and it's like crickets, like for years now, since 2016, 2017. So I have no motivation to post there at all anymore. Yeah. But at the same time, like you said earlier about why you post the way you do, it's because, well, what else are you going to do? You got to reach out to some people, and that's your only means to get people to come to your shows or whatever. So that's sort of that necessary evil. But my advice to people, and sort of what I've learned for myself this year, is when I posted on Facebook earlier this year and I said, hey, everybody, friends and family, starting a new YouTube channel, and it's going to be all about creativity and productivity. Come check it out, and blah, blah. Maybe 10 to 15 people click like. Maybe 3 people came and subscribed.
I was one of those people.
Sure, yeah. So I'm not saying there's zero value, but
you got through to me.
Yeah. But my bigger point is as I kept posting on Facebook week after week, just a link, like here's the new video I did. Here's the new video.
Yeah.
Like the same 2 people, the same 2 friends would like it. And so it's not doing anything, and it becomes deflating, because I'm like, wait a minute, I thought this is my friend network. This is my family. They're not supportive at all. And sort of where I'm going with this is, once I started posting a few videos on YouTube and I started developing my voice and the tonality, and especially with my channel trailer, the Wes Anderson channel trailer, it was like such clarity for me, because I felt like I had no community or audience, and I'm still not there yet, but people were like, not only liking the video, but they were commenting, and they were like, dude, I love this. Like, this is so good, like hilarious or whatever. And that was just the trailer, but I'm doing other videos where I solve a very specific problem for people.
Right,
so
the tutorials,
I've solved like the Dropbox disappearing icons, like different things like YouTube chapters not showing up in your timeline. So I've made very specific video solutions, and people are not just seeing the video. It's not about just likes or that. They're commenting, and they're telling me, they're like, thank you. They're like, you just saved me from throwing my laptop out the window, or like, and people are like, oh my God, thank you for making this video. And I'm like, my point is whether it's the Wes Anderson channel trailer appreciation of the art and craft of what I'm doing, or the very practical, like people can tell, like if they have any kind of Mac problem or creative Photoshop, Adobe problem, like I'm a good guy to come to, because like I'm explain it clearly and it's got style and humor to it. So
that's a no-brainer.
They're quickly picking up on that. And back to the thing about earlier about 1,000 true fans, like I feel like this is more the way to go. And I didn't learn this lesson until I was like already through it. And that's why I'm kind of sharing this to people starting out. It depends on your friends and family. Like I feel like your friends are probably more supportive of you than my friends are, because I have not felt, to be honest, I have not felt much support from like 95% of my friends and family. When I say that, part of it could be the Facebook algorithm. Maybe it's just not showing it to everything. But still, like in general, for as many times as I've posted, it's like people just, well, here's another example. On Instagram stories, you actually get to see who actually sees your Instagram stories, you know?
Yes.
And I see the individual people, friends from my life, lurking. And I see that they've seen every post that I do. Not once in like 10 years have they ever clicked like or haha or comment or anything. So this is what I mean, where I'm like, I just don't have that particular pool of friends. And part of it is a lot of my friends are not creative types as well. So and this was like a deeper thing back in New York. A lot of my first friends were like Christian and they were corporate. So they don't really understand like creativity, art stuff. So they don't really get it or like it. So part of it is all that. But the point is, my advice to people who are in my situation, which is a lot of content creators out there and people starting as YouTubers or whatever, it's like, don't necessarily count on your friends and family to be there to support you as you start out in this venture, because they kind of just don't get it or they don't care or whatever the reason. But my advice is like, don't let that stop you and dishearten you, because you need to go anyways and find your true audience, your true, I don't want to say your true friends, because you might still be friends with some of these people. They just don't get what you're doing. You know what I'm saying?
Do, although I don't feel like there have been a lot of, like, I wouldn't say that my audience on Facebook specifically is like typically like creative types or whatever. Like it's grown over the years, but I feel like even the people who don't have anything to do with art appreciate what I do even more, you know, because it's so different than their lives. So I have gotten a lot of support over the years. I think it's like...
Well, let me ask you this too. Are a lot of those people based in Stanford and you've known them for a long time?
Interesting. Yes.
Okay. So then maybe that's unique to me because I'm a military brat. I grew up moving around my whole life. So there's not, I don't have a hometown. Then I moved to New York, which is the most transient place. And nobody stays in New York. So everybody comes and goes. Totally. And then on top of that, I changed my name. So anybody from 20 years ago, if they see me, they're like, they might not even recognize my name.
True.
So
your name is very different. Yeah.
There's a lot of discontinuity in my life. So maybe that also explains.
That might be a part of it, of course.
So that would explain why. And I think for people who grow up in the same hometown and have best friends for a long time, like, yeah, those people would probably be supportive. For me, I don't really have that. Yeah. So it's like, yeah. But
one thing that also popped up in my head just was like in terms of engagement, right? And this is something I'm working on too, where it's like social media, it's like, it's called social media for a reason. Like we have to be social. We have to like ask questions. We have to like actively engage with people in order for them to want to engage with us, right? So I find this difficult because I a lot of the times I'm just like, look at this thing that I did, right? And there's no engagement there unless they're like, oh, that looks cool. You know what I mean? But in like opening up the dialogue, I think is really important. And I've learned that in terms of like Instagram and stuff like that, you're supposed to go on and use all the different features, like go on and use the live streaming capabilities and do the carousels or whatever. And you're supposed to like engage with people 15 minutes before you post something. The algorithm, like it's stupid, but it's like working within the algorithm.
Oh, really?
That the more people that you
before you
engage
post,
with,
you should
you
go
go
looking at your followers and click like and comment on their post before you post yours.
And ask questions and all that kind of, and like really be a social person. Wow. And then it will show your work to more people and you will get the comments and you have to ask your own questions and all that stuff. Yeah. So there's a method to the madness, but you have to be willing to do that stuff.
Yeah. I don't know that I'm
a lot
as an introvert too. I'm just like, I don't have the
Who has time for that?
Like, look, when I come across something that's
try it
interesting to me, I click like and I share it with specific friends that I think would enjoy it. Like I do that all the time.
But DM 5 people before you post and then post. Like don't post and ghost is like the term.
Never heard of that, but yeah, okay. That's what I've been doing. I've been posting and ghosting, I guess.
Of course, because it's the easiest thing to do. But like if you don't engage, then they won't engage. So there's like a trick to this too. You know what I mean? Like being a social person on social media.
Okay. All right. Duly noted.
You gotta DM people, and, you know, share their stuff. You gotta use all the features.
All right. I guess it's kind of a thing if I really want to go there. Right now I'm kind of leaning toward sticking with what I am doing, which is just focus on YouTube.
Do it. Yeah. Focus on YouTube.
Instagram, just post it and post and ghost. Everywhere else, just post and ghost. Like,
right.
A couple people will trickle in. A couple people
Yeah.
here and there, but
Well, think about it. Like Instagram could be your way of bringing people to YouTube, right? So
Yeah.
you want that.
Right.
You want people who like, I didn't even know he had a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And you want to direct them there, right? It's the pathway,
Yeah. So let me ask you this, and then maybe this will be a little bit of advice for you if you're not already doing this. But like we talked about social media is one thing, but do you have like an email list, or are you doing anything with like email marketing?
Yes, I have developed a newsletter that I post whenever I have a show coming up, but I don't do it regularly. So I don't have like an active like conversation with the people, but
Okay.
I do have like a really high success rate of them opening it.
Mhm.
And I guess maybe that's part of it that like because I don't write all the time, it's like personal and, it's like really sharing about what's going on in my life. And I make it very visually interesting. I usually link my videos to YouTube and stuff like that. So I make it as interactive as possible. And yeah, it's really only when something special is coming up, but I haven't utilized it in any other way to like have like an ongoing conversation. And that's something I would like to try.
Yeah, I mean, short of me getting a social media marketing, like hiring somebody to do all that, like I have a Substack and I'm trying to get better about sending out the emails as I post new videos.
Nice.
I'm so behind. Like I'm posting because I don't want to bombard people's inboxes all at once. So basically I'll send out an email if I get around to it this week or next week about a video I posted like 3 weeks ago or a month ago. So,
on YouTube.
Yeah. It doesn't really matter because it's not time sensitive. It's just like a tip or something you might do.
That's cool.
But I'm trying to catch up. Like once I get to the point where I'm caught up, then it's like I post a new video and then I send the email out like, here's the brand new video,
Right.
Because I do believe I'm still filling out Substack as a platform. Like I like it, but email marketing, like I don't like email in general, but I'm starting to see the value of it, which is you're bypassing the algorithms. So you don't have to jump through these hoops like you just explained about do this before you post and go like and comment. So you just
dumb.
draft your email and send it and it'll just show up in people's inboxes,
Right. Maybe we should be spending more of our time there.
Yeah,
honestly.
So that's sort of my suggestion to you is maybe tap into that a little more. And I'm trying to catch up and start doing that more regularly for myself. So
I'm going to actually make a note of that for myself. And I also have a Substack, but I think I wrote like one article on there and then never again. Because again, there's like too many options, right? Like Patreon. You and I, before we started recording, we said that we both want to start Patreons.
Yeah.
I have a Patreon. I put 3 free videos on there. But I would love to use that as my main platform because there is no algorithm.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. Same thing. Yeah. I have a Patreon. It's just sitting there.
Right. So I think all the stuff I put on YouTube, I'll also put on Patreon. And then eventually I would love to put some specialty things behind the paywall just for like a more exclusive like membership community or something like that. But it takes time to build all that stuff and to
all of it.
And to the conviction of like saying that I'm going to show up and provide what I say I'm going to provide. That's where I stop myself.
Because you don't want to lead people on in that way, right? You don't want to promise and then underdeliver.
Exactly. I'm afraid of that. Yeah. So then I don't start at all. It's the same reason I have like a podcast that I've been wanting to restart. I did a few episodes and stopped.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Right.
A long time ago.
Yeah. I called it like 3 different names. Right now it's
every episode was a different name of the podcast.
It's right now it's motion, light, and sound, and I want to talk to other video artists, kind of like conversations like what we're having today, and put that out there for other people who are in this like digital space and navigating, creating a business and a life for themselves based on the art. So I think there's a need for it, and just you setting up this call for us today has inspired me, because this is what we need to be doing more of this and sharing with these audiences and inspiring us to make more and inspiring them to start or wherever they are in their journeys.
Yes, 100%. I'm glad. Like I'm very excited. This is the first episode. I'm glad to have you on for the first episode. I love this conversation we've had. We bounced all around on tangents, but we bring it back.
I knew we would.
We bring it back. Like, the tangents are interconnected though. It's like a network of nodes and they're connected. Like this is connected to social media and creativity and it's all connected. So to me, it works.
Good. 100%.
Yeah. I think we'll wrap it up with that. I'll ask you for any sort of final thoughts. And then if you're up for it, we can record a little extra for like some of these other topics.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So before we jump into that, any final thoughts to leave for the audience here for your closing remarks?
Oh goodness. Closing remarks.
Or how can people reach you and all that? I know Holly Danger on
Yeah.
social
So what's
media.
nice about having developed that name really early on in my career, I got that name everywhere. So if you want to follow me, I do spend more time on Instagram, YouTube, Patreon eventually. But you can find myself under all of those things. And YouTube, I think, is a really great platform to share the ongoing life from the studio, like creating a business that you love for yourself. And that's really where I want to develop my channel, is sharing this unique perspective. Because, the one thing that I think, one great final remark is to say to every creator out there that you have a unique voice that only you have, because of your background, your experiences, and where you are in the world at this particular time on this particular day. And that is what makes you sharing your voice so important, because we are all people that can resonate from each other. We can all learn something from each other. And only you have, within you what you have to share, it's like so important. I feel like that's something I wish I learned sooner, to even realize that I could have a channel that focuses on my artwork. I'm like, what am I saying different from anybody else? But it really is different, because there's no other Holly Danger, and there's no other Jay Kaslo, and to the person who's watching or listening, there's only one of you. And so time is short, time is long, time is now. And I think that we all need to put it out there, because we could light up somebody else's life. And that's why I do the work.
Nice. Very well said. Love that.
Thank you.
All right.